Let's look at this set of questions. We have true, false, not given questions from 1 to 7. Then 8 to 13, we have gap filling questions. So question 7 says that artists in the German aesthetic tradition portrayed nature realistically. Okay, so let me just start with that. So I'll go to paragraph 1. Let me see if I can answer that based on paragraph 1 and see whether I can answer question 8 or 9 based on paragraph 1. So paragraph 1, after the picture we have paragraph. This is more like a one sentence intro. Margaret Preston's vibrant paintings and prints of Australian flowers, animals and landscapes have delighted the Australian public since the early 1920s. Margaret Preston was born. Hold on, let me check that question again. German. German is a keyword for me for question 1. Margaret Preston was born Margaret Rose McPherson. I can't see anything like German in this paragraph 1. Let me go and check question 8. Question 8 says that incorporated dash aboriginal is a keyword for that question 8. I can't see aboriginal in paragraph 1. So let me just jump to paragraph 2. I can see German in paragraph 2. So let's look at question 1. Artists in German aesthetic tradition portrayed nature realistically. So look at this place here where they wrote German. So let's read that entire paragraph. In 1898, after her father died, Margaret returned to Adelaide to study and then teach at the Adelaide School of Design. Her early artwork was influenced by the German aesthetic tradition. Take note of that. Her early artwork was influenced by, now pay attention, the German aesthetic tradition, in which subjects of the natural world were depicted in a true-to-life manner. What is the meaning of true-to-life manner? That's realistic. You are doing something as realistic as what? As possible. That's the meaning of true-to-life. So that's statement 1. Artists in the German aesthetic tradition portrayed nature realistically. That statement is fully supported. It is true. It is true. Number 2, Margaret attended a famous art college in Paris. I can see Paris in the next paragraph. See Paris here. Okay, so look at that sentence. Margaret's first visit to Europe in 1904 and her study in Paris. So that tells us that she studied in Paris. Now, that statement says attended a famous art college. Did she attend a famous art college? So look at the passage again. Her studies in Paris, France, had little impact on this naturalism that dominated her work from this early period. However, some 8 years later, after returning to Paris, can you see they did not tell us whether her school in Paris was a famous one or whether it was not famous? But we know that she went to Paris to study. We don't know the part of the statement that says famous art college. It is not in the passage. So our number 2 is going to be what? Not given. Okay? Number 8, remember what we saw in number 8, aboriginal art. I've not yet come across that, so I can't answer questions in number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 yet. So let me just continue with my true, false, not given. Margaret met her husband. Okay, so let's go back to the passage. Is there anything like husband in the next paragraph? Yes, I can see a name here, whom she married. Very good. So let's read that sentence. It was on board a boat returning to Australia that she met wealthy businessman William Preston, whom she married in 1919. Can you see that? It was on board a boat returning to Australia that she met William Preston. Look at question 3. Margaret met her husband William while teaching. No, that's not when she met her husband. She met her husband on a boat. Okay? She met her husband on a boat. So what does that tell you? Number 3 is what? Is false. Number 3 is false. Margaret Preston and Thea Proctor explored similar themes. So I'm looking for Thea Proctor. I can see Thea Proctor here. Her first major show in Australia was with her friend Thea Proctor in exhibitions in Melbourne and Sydney. So she did something together with Thea Proctor in Melbourne and Sydney in 1925. This issue of explored similar themes in their hearts. Explored similar themes in their hearts. I've not yet seen it there. Let's look at the next sentence. Many of Preston's prints were hand-colored. Similar themes. They now move to Preston again. So I'm going to pick not given for this number 4. I don't want it to waste my time. Number 5. Margaret's 1925 artworks of Sydney Harbour were simpler than her previous ones. Okay. Sydney Harbour is a proper noun here. Can you see Sydney Harbour? So if you look at the passage, you will see Harbour here. Is that Harbour in Sydney? Yes, I can see Sydney here. So let's read that paragraph closely. Many of Preston's prints were hand-colored in rich scarlet red, blues, and greens, and all of them were set in Chinese red lacquer frames. Harbour views were again prominent, but in comparison with earlier works, notice in question 5 they said previous ones with simpler than our previous ones. So previous ones is similar to earlier works, earlier artworks that they used in the passage. So look at the passage again. But in comparison with earlier artworks, they were compact and busy. In other words, 1925, she did some stuffs that they are describing as Harbour views. Before 1925, she did some stuffs also. But those ones were not as what? They were not as busy. They were not as busy as this one that she did in 1925. This one that she did in 1925, that they are saying here that word, they were compact and busy. Can you see that? The ones that she did in 1925 are what? They were compact and busy compared to the ones that she did earlier. It says, in comparison with her earlier artworks, these Harbour views that she did in 1925 were what? They were compact and busy. Now look at statement number 5. Margaret's 1925 artworks of Sydney Harbour were simpler. No, they were not simpler. They were more complex. They were more compact. They were busier. So number 5 is going to be what? I think number 5 should be false. Number 5 should be false. Number 6, the colors in Margaret's Berua print were very bright. Berua is a key word for me here. See Berua here. Can you see that? So let's take that paragraph from the beginning. From 1932 to 1939, Preston moved away from Sydney and lived with her husband at Berua on the upper reaches of the Hawkesbury River. Okay? The area was one of rugged natural beauty, and for the first time, Preston found herself living in a home surrounded by bush, or maybe a home surrounded by bush. Prior to this, the native flowers that featured in her paintings and prints had been purchased from local florists. They now grew in abundance around her home. Preston's prints became larger. Take notes. Because she's now living in a place surrounded by bush, what did they now say about her prints? They became larger, less complex, and less reliant on the use of bright colors. Can you see that? Less reliant on the use of bright colors. Question 6 says, the prints were very bright. Can you see contradiction? That's contradiction. So number 6 is going to be what? False. Number 6 is going to be false. Then number 7, when living in Berua, Margaret painted flowers in their natural location. Yes, this one is true. This number 7 is true. She painted them in their natural location. So look at that last sentence in that paragraph. Flowers were no longer arranged in vases, and Preston began to concentrate instead on flowers that were growing wild. That's it. Natural location. Growing in the wild. That is in the open space. So I've solved all the true, false, not given. Now, the gap filling. I can say Aboriginal. Interest in Aboriginal arts was inspired by seeing rock engravings close to our Berua home. I can see Berua here. While living in Berua, and undoubtedly prompted by the Aboriginal rock engravings found near our property, Preston also developed what was to be a lifelong interest in Aboriginal arts. On returning to Sydney in 1939, she became a member of the Anthropological Society of New South Wales and later visited many important Aboriginal sites throughout Australia. Preston believed that art provided the key to establishing a national body of arts that reflected the vast and ancient continent of Australia. Look at the question. Incorporated dash and colors from original arts in her work. Or incorporated dash and colors. Incorporated dash and colors. This place I highlighted. I can't see colors here. Look at this next paragraph here. See colors here. During the 1940s, symbols used by the Aboriginal people together with dried burnt colors, okay, symbols and colors. Yes, number 8 is going to be symbols. 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 Symbols used. Can you see symbols? Together with dried burnt colors. So symbols is the first thing, colors is the second thing. The instruction says use one word and or a number. So one word. These symbols is one word. That's okay. Now, next question, number 9. So incorporated symbols and colors from Aboriginal arts in our own work, often referred to Aboriginal sources in the dash she gave her artwork. Okay, Aboriginal sources. So became increasingly prominent in her paintings. The artist's titles from this period, let me highlight that part. The artist's titles from this period frequently acknowledge as sources. Hold on. In the titles she gave her artwork. Number 9 should be titles. Titles. Number 9 should be titles. Titles. Number 10. Very old method of dash was used for some prints. So that's 1953. It was in 1953 at the age of 78 that Preston produced her most significant print. The exhibition at Macquarie Galleries in Sydney included 29 prints made using the ancient technique known as stenciling. Ancient technique is a paraphrase for very old method. So what is that method here? Stenciling. S-T-E-N-C-I-L-I-N-G. Stenciling. Look at it here. The ancient technique known as stenciling. Number 11 was inspired by dash about Chinese arts. No, back to the passage now. Many of the artworks in the exhibition incorporated a fusion of Aboriginal and Chinese concepts. Preston had admired Chinese arts since 1915, when she acquired the first of her many books. So, was inspired by books. B-O-O-K-S. That's our answer for number 11. Jump to number 12. Old age. Still interested in dash and arts. Still interested in dash and arts. So, let's see. Age, old age. In her old age, she was interested in something and arts. So as she got older, look at this place here. As she got older, her love for painting, printmaking, and travel continued. So we have 3 things there. Painting, printmaking, and travel. So what do we pick for number 12? We have to pick one word. Still interested in, is it painting and art, or printmaking and art, or travel and art? I feel it should be travel. Painting and printmaking sounds like art. Painting sounds like art. Printmaking sounds like art. Travel does not sound like art. So I'm going to write travel for number 12. I hope I'm correct. Travel. And then number 13. Worked for nearly 6 decades, making more than dash artworks. This is about the number of artworks. So let me see. Look at this place here. By the time of her death in 1963, can you see the place I'm reading now? When she was 88, she had produced over 400 paintings and prints. Yes, that's our answer. Worked for nearly 6 decades, that's 60 years, making more than, the passage says produced over 400 is the same thing as more than 400. So what we have to write here is what? 400. If you write this, let me show you something. If you write FOURHUNDRED, if you write this, you have written 2 words. You are going to lose marks. Okay? Somebody says, what if I put dash there? If you put dash like this, it's not likely they will mark it correct. The best thing is to just write 400. That's a number. Okay? Just put your answer this way. So I've answered all the questions. So what I will do now is to submit. And let's see what my score will be. Wow, 7.5. I got 2 questions wrong. I got 7 correct. I got 2 questions wrong. I got 11 correct. So it's telling me that my number 12, it should be painting instead of travel. Let me see what did I write? Look at my answers here. Painting. Still interested in painting and arts. They said the answer is painting. Okay? Then, so instead of travel, it should be painting. Then, there's another one I got wrong under the true false not given. I think that's number 5. Number 5 says, Margaret's 1925 artworks of Sydney Abo were simpler than her previous one. They said it's not given. Okay. Simpler. I guess the word simpler, the reason is probably because of that word simpler. Let's look at the place. Which part of the passage talks about that thing? This place here now, look at it. Many of Preston's prints were hand-colored in rich red, scarlet, blue, and green. Okay, in blue and green. And all of them were set in Chinese red lacquer frames. Harbor views were again prominent, but in comparison with our earlier artworks, they were compact and busy. So, Margaret's 1925 artworks of Sydney Abo. Were simpler than her previous ones. Well, they say it's not given. 1925, Margaret's 1925 artworks of Sydney Abo. There's 1925 here. Artworks of Sydney Abo. See Abo here. The only problem with this, I think the problem is with this word, Sydney Abo. Artworks of Sydney Abo. That means that, okay, the things that she drew of Sydney Abo. In other words, she went to a particular Abo in Sydney and she painted something based on that place. That's what this question 5 sounds like. Okay? But from this passage, it says that what Abo views were again prominent. Which Abo are they referring to by saying Abo views? Is this Sydney Abo? Looking at it carefully, what I'm seeing about Sydney is that what? There was an exhibition in Melbourne, Sydney. Exhibition in Melbourne, Sydney does not really indicate that she drew the Abos in Sydney. She might have drawn Abos in some other places. And then she did exhibition of all her drawings in Sydney. That's what I'm thinking. Okay? So based on that, number 5 is going to be what? Not given. Okay? So this thing, the more one practices, the more you get to see all these tricks and your skills improves in dealing with IELTS reading questions. Okay?